Just to touch back, though, Aaron, on the JPFO film that you folks are going to make, I would hope that when it comes time to release it, you'll let me do a review for you.
I'd be delighted. Let me talk to you about a case that is now floating around the justice system called the Fincher case, I believe, the Wayne Fincher case in Arkansas.
Yes.
I noticed some comments that we've discussed about this, and maybe you'd like to shed some light on how outrageous this case is.
Yes. Wayne Fincher is a member he's a lieutenant commander of a militia in Arkansas. And I know when people say that, a lot of people's antennas go up and they go, wait a minute, we're going to turn off. We don't want to be associated with this. He's an honest man. He's a patriot. He has developed a legal document that he calls the Silver Bullet, and it fairly repudiates the ATF authority and the authority of the government to essentially limit the arms that are available to the people. It's a challenge to the current interpretation of Miller. It's a challenge to the collective rights interpretation. And Wayne is in trouble right now because they arrested him, and he's in jail in the Sebastian County Jail down there. And one of the other things that I bring up on my blog is a concept called authorized journalists. And essentially where that came from is the government saying, well, bloggers aren't authorized journalists. They don't have press cards. They're not as good as real journalists. And yet so much of what's happening in terms of breaking news that's important for liberty activists is suppressed in the mainstream media. They'll present news stories with thinly disguised editorial commentary. They'll choose what to present and what to omit. And in many cases, they'll choose to neglect the story altogether. And with very limited exceptions for some local press down there, the Fincher case is being virtually ignored. It's off the radar. And one of the reasons it concerns me is because I'm getting updates right now from some of the people involved. Wayne is now ill. Wayne has had to be taken to the hospital. At first they thought it was a heart attack. They've released him from the hospital. I just got word this morning that he is it's taking 31 hours to get him his anti-nausea medicine. Aaron, you know what? If the mainstream media got wind of the fact that medication was being withheld from prisoners at Gitmo, they would be all over it, screaming with headlines. Here's an American who is imprisoned under the authority of the federal government, and this man can't get his medication, and in order to get his medical records, his attorney has been told he's going to have to go to the judge and file a subpoena. Now, I just got a letter from Wayne Fincher. I wrote him in jail, and at first it got rejected because I committed the crime of sending him some writing paper and some stamps and some envelopes, thinking that this might be useful to him. And they sent the whole envelope back and wouldn't forward my letter on to him for that egregious sin. So I resent it with just the letter and with some information to let him know that, you know what, you're not forgotten. People are thinking about you. I'm covering you myself on my blog. And this, because I think I told you before this interview started, our internet is down right here. I'm going to give it to you before I give it to anybody else. This is just a brief couple sentences from his letter about his arrest. And he says, at my arrest, I had just come down from a deer stand that is about 20 feet to the bottom of the platform when two agents in full camo shouted from behind me to get down on the ground or they would shoot. I told them, if you just have to kill somebody, go ahead and shoot. I haven't done anything wrong, and I'm not getting on the ground. I then ordered them to take your guns off me, which they did. They were a bit taken aback. Okay, so this is kind of what went down at the Fincher arrest scene. And the other point I'd like to make about this is that Wayne was arrested under the auspices of Project Safe Neighborhoods. This is a federal program that's heavily backed not only by the Bush administration, but also, as you know, by the National Rifle Association, of which I am a life member.
Do you mind talking more about this issue, about the NRA and Project Safe Neighborhoods?
Well, there are a lot of NRA issues I could discuss, but I'd like to preface that first because I've been accused in the past of NRA bashing. Okay, and as I indicated, I am the NRA, Aaron. I'm a life member. Okay, what I do is I speak out when I have policy differences with NRA's paid management and with their staff, and essentially what I hold them to is the same standard I hold a politician to. I hold a politician to fidelity to our Constitution. I hold the NRA to fidelity to their bylaws. And if I could, again, I just read you a brief paragraph. I'd like to read you another brief paragraph if that's okay. And that's from the purposes and objectives of their bylaws. The first thing they do is they state that they're going to be called the National Rifle Association of America. Then the very next thing they say is that the purposes and objectives of the National Rifle Association of America are, 1, to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, especially with reference to the inalienable right of the individual American citizen guaranteed by such Constitution to acquire, possess, collect, exhibit, transport, carry, transfer ownership of, and enjoy the right to use firearms in order that the people may always be in a position to exercise their legitimate individual rights of self-preservation and defense of family, person, and property, as well as to serve effectively in the appropriate militia for the common defense of the Republic and the individual liberty of its citizens. That's my benchmark for the NRA. That's what I expect its management to promote. That's what I expect its staff to promote. And so people who want to criticize me for taking on NRA political statements or public policy statements that contradict that, I guess my rejoinder to them is, tell me where my criticism is untrue. And to give you a couple examples of that, when they say enforce existing gun laws, well, hold the phone. I understand shall not be infringed. I understand the people. So what existing gun laws are we determining to be constitutional and to pass that constitutional bright line of shall not be infringed? And I guess the most common rejoinder I have is that enforcing existing gun laws is precisely what the government was doing at Ruby Ridge and Waco. And when I hear the association say things like gun-free school zones, that no one but trained police and security officers ought to possess a gun on a school campus, again, I don't see anything in the Constitution that limits my right to keep and bear arms based on location, and I actually call gun-free school zones Harris-Klebold empowerment zones. If you'll recall, at Columbine, there was a trained law enforcement security guard, actually an off-duty cop, on duty at school as their campus security officer. He exchanged shots with one of the killers, and what happened was predictable. He escaped, and the killer retreated inside to go and pick easier, unarmed prey. And why a responsible adult, why a teacher, why an administrator, why a parent cannot be on campus in full possession of their constitutional rights, why the NRA management thinks that that's a good thing to have, I would like for them to defend that. I would like for them to tell us where in the Constitution they see the authority to impose such limits on the people. It's the same, we started this part of our discussion with Project Safe Neighborhoods. Again, where is the constitutional authority for that? And again, I can point you to speeches by NRA representatives where they promise that Project Exile and Project Safe Neighborhoods are going to reduce crime. They started the program in Richmond. They expanded it to Philadelphia. They put it into Boston. And guess what? In all of those cities, violent crime and murder is through the roof. Last year, Boston recorded a 10-year high in its homicide rate. Richmond is out of control. Philadelphia is begging people for solutions.